Hello everybody, hope you're doing well. My name is Mahmoud Kiasari and this is Special Case. So today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, percentage or percentile. As we all know, this is very applicable concept in our day-to-day life. It doesn't matter if it's about the banking, it doesn't matter about the shopping, it doesn't matter about the interest rate or the discounts, or most importantly about the grades that you get from your school based on your some kind of exercises, based on your handouts, based on your final exam, and anything else. So today we are going to put specifically our focus over the grades. Have you ever wondered how you can calculate or how your professors are going to calculate your grades based on the way that you're working? So today we are going to enlighten you based on that. So first of all, why we're going to talk about that? Because again, as we all know, the percentage or percentiles or the numbers of decimals, because these two things are so tied to each other, are around us. So it doesn't make any sense that you would just, for example, go to a grocery store and after that you see the 20% discount and say that, hey, how much does it actually cost? Instead of just asking some kind of the cashier or some kind of using some kind of devices, you can do it by yourself. That's a very good exercise for the brain itself. So in total, today we are going to reach from the confusion and stress to clarity and confidence that understand how we can use all of those things in our own work. So let's start with a very basic concept that you have in some kind of in the university or in your school or any other places. We do have a universal grade formula. It means that if you would like to find what you got from the specific course, you do have a formula to do that. First of all, this formula is the simplified one. We will see in the next slide that how we can just kind of deal with more complicated one. So the formula is like this. Your percentage is going to be equal to your score divided by the total times 100. Again, your score means that, for instance, we are talking about a question of 50, an exam of 50 questions. And you only could answer 42 of them. Not only because that was very spectacular, but you do have a 42 out of the 50 right of those questions. So right now, you're wondering if I want to convert this mark to the percentage. Obviously, most of the time when we are talking about the marking, we are talking about the number between 0 and 100%, right? If I want to convert to that, how am I actually going to do it? So it's very simple. 42 divided by 50 is going to give you a number. This number is specifically between 0 and 1. Again, remember, percentage is highly related to the numbers. So when we are talking about, for example, 50%, actually we are talking about a number between 0 and 1. When we are talking about the 100%, that's the top value, 0% is the bottom value. So at this point, when you divide 42 by 50, you do have a number that we know it as 0.84. So right now, this is your point. But here's the thing, how I can convert it to percentage? Simple, the only thing that you have to do times whatever number that you have by 100, and if you have the specific thing in the percentage itself. So as you can see over here, you got the 42 out of 50, divide that 42 by 50, you do have the point, you have 0.84. Multiply it by 100, and after that, put a percentage symbol beside of that, and you do have your point or your number in the percentage itself, so it only considers two different steps. Another thing that we do have is about the conversion. As I just told you, percentage and decimals are two in-tight things. It means that at some point, you have to have a percentage, at some point, you have to have a decimal, and some points, you have to know how to convert them together. So right now, we are going to talk about that. The first thing that you have to know is how we can convert decimal to percentage. Imagine that you do have a number. Right now, imagine that the number is between 0 and 1. Obviously, you can use the bigger numbers, but right now, imagine that number is between 0 and 1. For example, 0.15. If I ask you to convert that one to percentage, what would you do? Obviously, you're going to multiply that by 100, right? Based on the previous some kind of slide and the formula that we saw for calculating the weight or calculating your mark, you know that when you find a point that number is between 0 and 1, you have to multiply by 100. This is the same scenario. So 0.15 times 100 is going to give you 15. And the only thing that you have to do is just put a percentage beside of that. Let's see, look, another question. So you have 0.55. 0.55 actually times 100 is going to 55%. 0.853 times it by 100 is going to 85.3. And after that, for instance, if you do have a number bigger than 1, 1.02, just multiply by 100 and you'll have 102 percentage. For one of you or some of you that are wondering that how we do have this kind of multiplication and anything, I also have another video that we talked about the decimals and how we can multiply and do the division. I really recommend you to some kind of see that one to understand what is going on. But again, if you have any problem, just put a comment for me and I can help you or make another video related to that. So what can we do about the percent to decimal? So this scenario is completely vice versa. It means that whatever number that you had, you are going to divide it by 100 or multiply it by 0.01. 0.01 is actually 1 divided by 100. If you just do the calculation, if you just use that, you can divide 1 by 100 and you can see it's 0.01. So the only thing that you have to do, multiply your number by 2.01, get rid of the percentage, and that is your point. So 35 percentage. Just quick, do it fast. How I can find this some kind of decimal point? So the only thing that you have to do, multiply by 0.01 and you have 0.35. So I'm going to give you one specific hint at this kind of question that's going to help you a little bit more. So if you do have decimal and you want to convert it to percent, the only thing that you have to do is 2 steps. First step, get rid of the percentage, whatever symbol that it has beside of it. And after that, move the decimal point 2 points to the right. Why I'm doing this, because if you just look at the first question that you don't have 0.15, and if you multiply it by 100, what am I doing actually? I'm trying to put 2 zeros, remember, 2 meaningful zeros by the 0.15 itself. It means that those 2 meaningful zeros are going to help me to move those decimal points to the right. We are doing the same thing. Instead of just doing all of those steps, having all of those headaches, the only thing that you have to do, move the decimal points 2 to the right. I believe you can tell me right now that how I can do the percent to decimal. The same step backward. It means that when you have, for example, 35, get rid of percentage. You need a point, right? So the only thing that you have to do, move the decimal points 2 to the left. And when you have the 14%, get rid of the percentage, move the decimal point to the left. Again, why we're doing that? Because 0.01 actually is going to do that. So we're just doing it down here in order to some kind of make it more simplified and do it fast. So we do have some kind of exceptional situation. I mean, there are that kind of exceptional thing because the way that you see at the 0.15, move the decimal points 2 to the right, say that, okay, that's easy, 15, right? But imagine that the question could be a little bit more challenging. It means that we don't have 2 digits, we only have 1 after that. Maybe someone will guess how? So look at this question, 0.8. And if I ask you, I would like to convert this number into percentage, what would you do? You say that, okay, that's easy. The only thing that I have to do is to move the decimal points 2 to the right. 1 step, and second step, there's no second step. Why? Because I don't have any number. This is just 8. This is the tricky part. At this kind of situation, when you have this number, when you have the 0.8, you have to consider a fact. If you remember from our previous videos, again, you can just look at them to see that what's going on. If you remember from our previous videos, I told you at some point, we can use extra zeros, either for add, subtract, division, any other kind of things. We can use it. Why we can do that? Because adding the number of zeros into a number like the 0.8 is not going to change anything. It means that 0.8 has the same value as 0.80 has the same value as 0.800. So at this point, I'm going to do the same thing. It means that 0.8 is going to put a 0 beside of that. 0.80, is it going to change anything? No. 0.800, changing anything? No. Remember, the zeros after the last decimal number from the right doesn't matter if you put them beside of that because it's not going to change anything. So it means that this question was actually like this, 0.80. So at this point, it would be simple, right? Because right now I do have 2 digits, move 2 digits to the right, what you got? So you have 80%. Let's move to the next one, 0.5. So in this place, still I'm going to do that. So I'm going to use it as 0.50. So 0.50 is what? 50%, so on and so forth. So try to remember these steps. They're so simple, they're so easy, and I believe you can do it. So let's have some examples to see that whether actually we understand the whole concept or not. So this practice is easy. Whenever you see a percentage, try to convert it to decimal number. And whenever you see a decimal number, try to convert it to percentage. Okay, let's just start from the first one. We do have 35%. So obviously you remember that. If you want to do it very, very easy way, the only thing that I have to do, get rid of percentage, move the decimal points 2 to the left. 0.35%, bam, 0.35. 14%, bam, 0.14. 58.5, bam, 0.585. For the next question, we do have 0.75. So at this point, what do I have? I do have a decimal number, and I would like to convert it to percentage, right? So the only thing that you have to do, just move decimal point 2 to the right, and after that, put another percentage beside of that. 0.75, 75%. 0.40, 40%, simple. So again, remember, either you can consider this fact that if you want to convert the percentage to decimal, multiply it by 0.01, or move 2 to the left, move 2 decimal points to the left, and when you put decimal to the percentage, move decimal points 2 places to the right. That would be simple. Okay, so we do have some kind of visualization that shows that 35% actually means that 35 out of 100. It means that if you have 100 boxes, you are going to pick only 35 of them. So let's see how does it actually work in the real world. We do have very simple formula for that. So P is equals B times R. What is P? P is most of the times means your point, or at some specific point your percentage. B is the base and R is the rate or the thing that you got. So maybe right now you should ask yourself, what is that? Let's go back to the question that we have. In that specific question, you had 42 points out of 50, and your final number was what? Was your point 84. So let's just try to implement it in this specific equation. P is your point that you do have it as 42 points. Base means that how many number of points was there in total? 50. And R was the rate or the number that you got by answering 42 points out of 50. You can see that there's a relationship between them. P is equals B times R. So let's just look at it into another way. Maybe I just give you the number of points that you had to write. You had 42. And after that, I gave you the number of questions. How you can find your rate or how you can find your number which is in between 0 and 1. Obviously, we know. Points divided by all of those base or all of the numbers. 42 divided by 50, and you have 0.84. And right now, let's look at it from another perspective. What would happen if you do have your points, it is 42, and after that, I would give you a rate and say that, okay, so based on this fact that you got 42 questions right, and you got 0.84, how many questions or how many base points actually were there? So the only thing that you have to do, 42 divided by 0.84, and you have it 50. I will show you a triangle that actually you can see all of them together, and you can just use it in order to, because right now I know it would be a little bit confusing that at what point I should use division, at what point I should use multiplication. I will talk about it, stay with me. So another thing that we have, just a simple example, it means that, okay, so we talked about percentage, we talked about decimal. How are we actually going to use that in the real world? Imagine that you do have the area, and this area is 1028 or 1028 square inch. And after that, I would tell you that, okay, I would try to get only 60% of it and put a desk or anything on that. So you're thinking that, okay, 60% of 1028, I know how I can calculate it. So 60% of 1028, I believe it would be so challenging right now if you want to multiply them together, because obviously this is the thing that you have to do. 60% of 1028, which is whatever number is that. But here's the thing, we remember there was a reason that we would try to convert the percentage to decimal, right? 60% to decimal. Think about it. What was that? Get rid of percentage, move decimal points 2 to the left. So what we do have, 16%, it would be 0.16. Right now it would be simple, 0.16 times 1028. I believe you all know about the multiplication. If you don't, I also have a video about multiplication of decimal numbers, so you can just look at it and understand what is going on. But anyways, so I do have a 0.16 times 1028, and I do have it as what? 164.48. So right now, I know 60% of 1028 is actually 164.48, and you can see the visualization. So that was simple, right? But was so applicable. Right now, I know how I can use the percentage in the real world by converting to decimal, and after that, do the multiplication. So let's right now look at another thing about the mixed percent, because the thing that we just saw was about whole numbers or maybe at some point decimal numbers, but we didn't talk about the mixed numbers. If you don't remember it, I do have another video about the whole numbers, about the mixed, some kind of fractions. So you can just look at it, and this is so simple and this is so easy. So what is a mixed percent? Mixed percent. Mixed percent means that rather than just a whole number or maybe a decimal point, you also do have a fraction beside of that. So that fraction is going to change the game a little bit, but not that much. Imagine that you do have a number, 6 1/4%. So maybe you just look at it and say that, what kind of alien language is that? So this is simple. This one means that you don't have any 6% solid. You have 6% and another 1/4. So what is 1/4? Do the division. You know about that. It would be 0.25. So it means that rather than this is 6 as a whole number for the person, I do have 0.25 as another person. Add them up, so you have 6.25%. Simple. So another thing that maybe you would have in your questions is that, okay, consider the whole number and convert it to decimal point. We all know how to do that, right? The challenging part was the first one that we did it. So we do have 6.25%. If I want to convert it to what? To the decimal point, easy. Get rid of percentage, move the decimal points 2 to the left. So 1 to the left would be 0.625. Another one to the left, we know that at this point, right, the one that we just moved it to the right, we have to use a 0 because putting that 0 beside another decimal point is going to reduce its value. Instead of 0.625, we got 0.0625. Okay, that was simple. Again, if you have any problem with this specific section, put a comment for me and I will talk about it. So another thing that we do have right now, it's the real deal, because obviously not all the points that you get from the exam or from the whole course is going to value the same. At some points you do have your exercises, some worth some point or some percentage that we call it as weights. There's other points that you have your final exam, you do have your other kind of exam. So at the end, the professor or the person that is in charge, he has to find the final value based on your performance, obviously, and based on the value of each of those questions, how much they weight actually. So let's look at this diagram. At this diagram, you see that it's specifically different kind of subject. I do have exams, I do have quizzes, I do have homework, I do have project. But you can see that they're not the same. It means that exams worth 40% and quizzes worth 20% and so on and so forth. So what does it actually mean? It means that at the end of the day, when you're trying to find your final exam or the final mark, you have to do what? You have to consider these weights. Multiply the numbers that you got for each point by these weights, add them up. One interesting thing that you can see over here is that apparently these some kind of weights, they do have a relationship with each other. That's right, 40% plus 20% plus 20% plus another 20%. It will be 100%. It means that if you add all of those weights together, you do have 100% at the end. Again, we are talking about numbers between 0 and 100% or between 0 and 1. So we have to make sure when we are dividing them into different weights, again, at the same time, we do have what? We do have the 100% at the end. So, for instance, let's just look at this question. So for this question, I would give you a couple of things, and I would say that based on their weights, try to find your final mark. So I do have the exams, and you got the score of 78. I do have a quizzes, you got the score of 90, again, from 100, which is for the base for itself. I do have homework, you got 95, you got project from 85. So we do have a very, very simple formula. The formula is like this. If you want to find your total mark, you have to do score times weight for each of them, add them up, and you have your final mark. Again, as you can see, 40 plus 20 plus 20 plus 20, still 100%. So step one, what I do have for exam, I got 78, that's good. 78 times 40%, give you a number, 31.2. I do have quizzes, 0.2 times 90. I do have homework, I do have 0.2 times 95, project, do the same. Add all of those values, and 85.2% would be your final point, or your final number. Still, this number between 0 and 100%, the only thing that has changed is that each of those subjects that you got point based on that, they do have actually different weights. So, for instance, let's just look at another complicated question. Right now, we do have all of those categories. We do have everything that we have. But instead of just giving you the point between a 0 and 100, I'm going to give you the points that you earned, and we are going to use the base value rather than 100 itself. So let's look at this one. It means that you do have a grade, right? So you know that the exam is worth 40%. The number of points that you get are 156, but the number of base is not 100 anymore. It's 200 actually. So what should I do at this point? First of all, we have to find the grades or find the percentage of each specific category. And after that, use the weight at the end in order to add them up. So let's look at the first part. I got 156 out of 200. So if I want to convert it to decimal points, what would happen? I have to divide 156 by 200. Obviously, it would be a number between 0 and 1. That number is either 0.78, or if you convert it to a percentage, it would be 78%. Let's move to another subject. For the quizzes, you got 90 out of 100. You get 90%. Homework, 95 out of 100, 95%, and project, 85%. So here's the thing that we have. For each of them, you got a specific amount of value. But here's the question. What is your final point? The final point is completely related to the weight of each of those categories. For instance, when you get 78% with the weight of 40%, the only thing that you have to do is just multiply these two numbers together. If it is hard for you with the percentage, what? Forget about the percentage. Just convert both of them into decimal. 40 to decimals, 0.4. 78 to decimals, 0.78. Do this multiplication, and at the end, convert it to percentage. Why we're trying to do that? Remember, the final mark should be in percentage, right? So if you just do this whole thing that I just told you, you do have 31.2% for your exams based on the numbers that you got, based on the weight. Do the same thing for all of them. If you add them up, you do have 85.2. As simple as that. Try to some kind of have exercise. Try to stop the video. Change those numbers for yourself. For instance, I will give you a question. Imagine that your exams worth 40%, your quizzes worth 15%, your homework worth 15%, and at the end, your project worth 30%. So what would happen on that time? Just put a comment for me, and after that, we can discuss about it. So, and here's another form of visualization to show it to you that what is going on. Impact by scale. It means that not all the things that you earn in your some kind of course or in the life are going to have the same value. It means that at some point you do have the 100-point test. So that one only considered as 1% of the whole things. So the 1 point is small great impact. It means that if you just lose 1 or 2 exam, or if you just do it bad, it doesn't have that much of effect. For the next one, we do have 50-point exam. So that worth 2%. It's moderate impact, but it's not that good. It's not that bad, but for the 20-point quiz, it worth 5%. So 5% still considered as a lot, but still it's not that one. So the only thing that I'm trying to show you is that by having different kind of scales, or sometimes they know it as weights, we do have different kind of impacts over the final thing. The strategic point that you have to consider is that prioritize things based on that. Obviously, if you have a point that worth 40%, it would be considerable rather than the one that only worth 5%. So another thing that we do have is sometimes your professor would say that, okay, we do have some kind of extra credit. So this extra credit has a way also to be considered or will be added to your final number, right? Imagine that you got 82%, and after that, you are trying to find a way in order to how that extra credit is going to help me. So I'm going to show you a way. The extra impact or extra credit impact is extra point divided by all of those points that we have for the question. Remember, we had 50 for that one, and it would be times the category weight. Let's see what has happened. So imagine that you got the quiz, and you got some extra credit on that specific section. Obviously, we know quizzes is going to be worth 20% of the final grade. And after that, your total of quizzes is 40, and you just had 2 extra points for your quizzes. So obviously, 20 divided by 40 is going to be a number, and you will also have to remember that. You have to multiply that number by what? By 20%, because not all of those credits are going to be counted. Only 20% of everything is going to be counted. If you do this calculation, you do have 1% as boost. It means that your 82% just converted to 83.2%. So try to remember how you some kind of use this weight or how to convert that one. Again, still is not that kind of complicated thing to consider as an extra credit, but it's worth a try to some kind of have more exercises. So let's have a cheat sheet. But before having the cheat sheet, if you remember that I told you that we do have a triangle and we can use it in order to consider that P or your point or percentage is equals to base times rate. So look at the triangle itself. So what you see right now, imagine that I would ask you to find a P. P is my unknown. The only thing that you have to do is just put your thumb over the P itself and P is gone. What would left? R and B. Since both of them are side by side, you just consider add multiplication. Imagine that I would ask you to find a rate. So you just put your thumb over rate, and what you got? You have P on the top and b on the bottom would be p divided by b. And imagine that I would ask you for the base. How many questions actually were there? So you just put your some kind of thumb on the b, and after that you have p divided by r. It is so simple. Right now we just use this way, but in the future we actually learn how by considering solving different kind of equations. So the one thing that we remember out of this course or out of this section was that if you want to find your grade into percentage, the only thing that you have to do is your score divided by all of the number times 100. If you have 42 points, divided by 50 times 100, and if you give you a number. And we also learned the formula that percentage or point is base times rate, and you also can use the triangle itself. Another thing that we learned was about a conversion, how we convert the decimal to percentage or vice versa. Remember, percentage to decimal, get rid of percentage, and move 2 to the left. Decimal to percentage, you have your 2 to the right and add a percentage to it. Another thing that we learned is that not all of those points that you get from your course based on different kind of subject, they're worth actually the same. They do have weights or they do have scales. They do have different impacts. So we learned the formula that your overall would be sum of categories times weights. It means that I do have the category percent, for example, 80% of your quizzes, and times the weight. That the specific thing was only 20%. I got 90% for my final exam, 90% times 40%. So you have to consider two things when you're trying to calculate all of those numbers. One is the categories percentage, specific thing without any weight. After that, you have to imply the weights over there, and add them up to find your total point. Again, we do have some kind of grade forecasting, is that how we can some kind of forecast the grade and etc. So I hope you all enjoy this part and enjoy this session, which was about the percentage. So again, this is about Math 101. So I try to explain everything to you. Again, if you have any problem, put a comment below, and after that I can answer you. And if you see that apparently this problem is going to be so complicated, I'm going to make another video for you. So have yourself a great day, night, whatever. See you around.